12 to 25. So then, brothers and sisters, we are debtors not to the flesh, to live according to the flesh. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. For all who are led by the Spirit of God are children of God. For you did not receive a spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received a spirit of adoption, when we cry, Abba, Father. It is that very Spirit bearing witness with our spirit that we are the children of God. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ, if in fact we suffer with him, so that we may also be glorified with him. I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory about to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the children of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not of its own will, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to decay and will obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning in labor pains until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly while we wait for adoption, the redemption of our bodies. For in hope we were saved. Now, hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what is seen? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. Yes, we do. It's all good. As we were making the plans for what was going to happen outside the church offices, I have to say that I was thrilled when the decision was made that we were going to have a fountain there. There's something about the sound of water gurgling that is just so relaxing, and I couldn't wait for that to happen. And it did. It makes that wonderful sound. That's wonderful. I love it. It's beautiful. What I hadn't thought about, though, was something else that the fountain does, and that something else that it does has become much, much more meaningful to me. And that is birds. The fall and spring, when there are so many species of birds migrating through the Central Coast, it seems like every single one of them stops for a drink and a bath. And it's an amazing assortment of sizes and colors and shapes. One day there were, I think, 12 birds at one time in the fountain taking baths. Splash, splash, splash. It's so much fun to watch. And I'm not a bird person, so I don't know what 99% of them are, except to say, oh, it's a bird. But they are beautiful. The permanent residents of the area, though, seem to visit all the time. The crows come and they wash their food, sometimes leaving some of it behind in the fountain. The doves come for a bath. The woodpeckers, the hummingbirds are really funny. This is going to sound a little untoward. We were laughing about it the other day. They like to come and they hover in the spout. And one of my friends watched that happen and said, oh, it's a hummingbird bidet. That's what it was. So they come. I was watching this morning. I make an outline after I arrive at church on Sundays, and that's why it's not on my tablet already, because I have to transfer it, and sometimes the chip gods disagree or something. But I counted, and I lost count at 12 different species of birds while I was doing my outline this morning. had come and visited. Last week, there was a young red-tailed hawk in the fountain. Adults have stopped before, but they're really shy. And as soon as they look and see me sitting there behind the window, they're gone. Well, this young one was not shy. He stayed and had a drink and took a bath. But he had to be looking at me the entire time. And if I would move just a little bit so that I was behind the center post in the windows, he would move. So he could see me. And he watched me the whole time. But he took his bath. It was really fun. My favorites, though, are the scrub jays. And some time ago, I read that they have a beautiful whisper song. Y'all know what whisper songs are? I didn't. I wasn't a bird person, so I didn't know. But evidently, many species of birds have two songs. They have the one that we hear, the normal song, and then they have what's called a whisper song, and it's called that because it's very, very quiet. And they generally only do it when they're really feeling safe and content, and that's true with scrub jays. And the only sound I ever heard from a scrub jay was that kind of ugly squawk they make. Well, they do have a whisper song, and you can look it up online and you can listen to it, and it is beautiful. It is beautiful. And they do reserve it for those moments when they are really feeling safe and content. And this article went on to say, if you really want to hear it, make friends with some scrub jays. And the way to make friends with scrub jays is you feed them. So, I do. Now, I have to be careful with it when GVNS is in session because there are a couple of kids who have really, really, really severe peanut allergies. They can't even be near the shells. So I can't feed when GVNS is in school, but other times I do. And I started by throwing some peanuts out on the patio, and as soon as I did that, you know who came and got them, all the crows. But the crow, and I like crows, I do. I like crows. But the crows are a little bit more shy than the scrub jays. Yeah, who would have thought that? I can put peanuts in my office. I always leave my office doors propped open when the weather is even halfway decent. I can put the peanuts on the floor in the office and the scrub jays will come in to get them. The crows won't. So, I do that. And at least a couple times every day, I've got a scrub jay who comes in, looks around, and there aren't any peanuts on the floor. There's one or two that will sit on a chair and wait. They might march around the office a little bit, look underneath the sofa, behind the sofa, trying to find where their peanut is. And then there are those who will literally just sit and wait until I get one for them. Between the crows, the jays, the other birds, the bluebellies that are more of them around this year, I think, than I've ever seen before. I had a little tiny one, smaller than my thumb, that I caught the other day. He was sitting on my thumb. He was pictured, put him up on Facebook. There's a bat who spends his days in this little crack between two beams above the front office door. Between all of these, my little friends, I feel almost like St. Francis. And I feel like I'm getting a kinship with them, that when I watch them, I feel as if, literally, I feel as if I'm watching the hand of God. Now, I do have to say, I haven't gotten there with the gophers or the ground squirrels. And we were rid of the ground squirrels for a while. We had rabbits, and the rabbits were all gone. I read that there was a virus that was going around and killing the rabbits, and I assume that's what happened, and the ground squirrels came and took the dens back. So I'm not quite with St. Francis yet, because I think he would have liked even the gophers. A few years ago, I read about the 1969 oil spill when the Union Oil Platform Alpha blew out in the Channel. And that started what we know as the modern environmental movement. And those of you who lived here in those days may have that all etched on your minds. I've seen photographs of it. It was horrific. But I read a quote that I couldn't help but think about. Everything's going wrong today, Greg. Couldn't help but think about as I gave my peanuts to my Scrub J friends. Fred Hartley, who was then the president of Union Oil Company, said, and I quote, "I don't like to call it a disaster because there has been no loss of human life. I'm amazed at the publicity for the loss of a few birds." And there the Scrub Jay is scolding me for forgetting his peanut. Sister Hummingbird is dipping herself in the spout of the fountain. And I think God probably thought it was a disaster. I'm filled with joy as I watch my little new friends. And I grieve a world where one estimate tells us that a species goes extinct every 20 minutes. Now, about the same day, it might have been the same day that the red-tailed hawk visited, there was an editorial in the local paper, and there was another quote in that I want to read for you. The writer said, "The worldview of the Bible gives man a divine mandate to subdue the earth." And I read that, and I thought Francis would disagree. And so would Paul. So would Paul. In recent sermons, we've talked about Paul a good bit, and the fact that the book of Romans is Paul's clearest expression of his theology, his clearest expression of what he understands the gospel to be, his clearest expression of how God works. Now, that's been a theme over the last couple of weeks, and another theme that's been happening that I've been noticing is how many of the passages have had metaphors of nature praising God. The trees clapping their hands, the mountains singing, the mountains skipping, all of those kinds of pictures. And those were all metaphor. But I don't think Paul is talking in metaphor in the passage we read today. I think Paul is being quite literal, that when salvation comes, we are partners with all of creation in God's program of salvation. That all of creation is being saved, and at least in part, the reason that creation needs to be saved is because of us. And that salvation comes to creation when we become what we were supposed to be all along. And creation waits with eager longing for that to happen. It waits for us to desist in using and abusing our sisters and brothers, as Francis would characterize them. And so we find salvation, and so does all of creation. We see the world with new eyes and see that which God looked at and spoke of as being very good. And we become partners in worshiping God with all of creation, but also in revealing God with all of creation. Now, we're not there yet, by a long stretch. Indeed, we still have lots of folk who say things like that editorial writer in the News Press did, that we have a divine mandate to subdue the earth, which is in need of being subdued. And you can understand at least part of that. Nature can be pretty terrorizing at times. But they miss the point. So what do we do now? In the meantime, while we work to stop some of these things from happening. I think the first thing is make friends with a scrub jay. Or if not a scrub jay, the cat that purrs in your lap, or the dog that waits for you to open the door with such anticipation that you think he's just going to explode. But make friends with something that's not human. And dare to do what Francis did and call that something not that pesky scrub jay, that cat that makes you want to go, but your sister or your brother. Listen to the whisper song. Scratch under the chin or between the ears. Just enjoy. Just enjoy. Slow down and allow yourself to be embraced by the whole of creation with all of its majesty, its terror, its beauty. And as you look at it, see in it the very thumbprint of God, because God made it and loves it, even the mosquitoes and the gophers. Well, I guess. Slow down and see the wonders of creation in yourself. Slow down and look at this marvelous body that you have, even though it probably has aches and pains and creaks that it didn't used to have, and maybe it doesn't do everything quite the way it's supposed to anymore, but it still is astounding in what it is and what it does and how you can interface through it with everything that God has made. Spend time with another one of those bodies and see the same thing in them. Look at that young woman and be amazed at her beauty. Look at that elderly woman and how she has changed through the years and is still just as beautiful in very different ways. Look at that young man or that young boy who is so full of energy and possibilities and just going. And then the elderly man who doesn't go very quickly anymore, but carries with him decades of experience and wisdom, and still carries a little bit of that explosion waiting to happen. And sit down, and instead of running and running and running, have a cup of tea or coffee or wine. Sit together and watch, or talk, or play a game, or just be together. We work to minimize our footprint as much as we can. Human beings have never lived in harmony with nature. You know, we hear that all the time. Oh, if we could just get back to the way the Native Americans did and live in harmony with nature. They didn't live in harmony with nature either. You know, this continent used to have woolly mammoths. They're not here anymore. They're not here anymore because somebody killed them all off. But they did better than we do. We can do better. We can begin to stand up for the least of these. We've talked a lot about the least of these in some of our passages over the past few weeks, but I'll bet not a single one of you thought of a snowy plover when you thought the least of these, or a California tiger salamander, or a steelhead trout, or a California least tern, or scores of other least of these in our backyards who need someone caring for them and reaching out to them. And then mourn for the ones who've disappeared every 20 minutes. As I was looking through some of those lists, for some reason one jumped out at me. The Santa Barbara song sparrow. They were found only on one island in the Channel Islands. And they lost much of their habitat as human beings cut it down for crops. back in the day when they did those things out on the Channel Islands. And then they lost more of them as feral cats began to get them on the Channel Islands. And then that little tiny bit of habitat they still had left caught fire. And it caught fire, and they were all gone, every single one of them. And so in 1983, they were declared extinct. Mourn. I do. I'm sure God does. Because God created that Santa Barbara song sparrow and listened to its particular voice and smiled. And when it disappeared, God cried. Work to find as much balance as we can with this creation that God declared very good, even when it's as frightening as a wildfire or a great white, and when it's as majestic as a golden eagle riding the thermals. And remember in all of that you and I are creatures. We're part of the created world. We're not separate from them. We're one of them. And God made us just as God made them. And so we work and we care for our brothers and sisters with wings, feathers, scales, claws, fins, fur, leaves, flowers, and bark. And then, as we do that, we can look around with them and we can see what God meant when God said, oh, very good, very good. And speaking not just about them out there, but about us, because we are very good with them. So this week, do what I ask the kids to do. Look and see how many creatures you can see. Maybe watch out your window and count how many species of birds you see. It's astounding. I don't have any idea what they were. There were big ones, there were little ones. There were some that were red. There was a blue one this morning. Not the scrub jay, another blue one. There were some yellow ones. There were ones I did know. The woodpeckers, they didn't come around this morning, but I know them when they come. Watch and see what you can see. And when you see them, address them by name, just like Francis did. Ah, brother, whatever you are, bird. Sister, flower. Cousin. Together, God has created all of us and declared us